Hey, everybody, if you're watching this later, we go live and then we usually wait a few minutes for everybody to get here and for everybody to share the feed. So just hang tight for a little bit. And where's my share button? Why is my share button gone? What in the world is... I swear it's always here I go. Let's try again. So
right. Okay.
There we go.
Did you send me?
I'm about to.
Right.
It was acting weird at first.
Let me know when you send it, and then I'll go there and I'll go to my other account and share it.
So let me go ahead and share it from my account as well. And Facebook's been changing everything to the point where normally we'll ask an icebreaker while we're doing the sharing.
Give me one.
How about this for an icebreaker? Although this is kind of on topic. How do you, if you haven't already, how do you plan to vote on election day? Absentee, early?
Well, actually, I did an early kickoff for an absentee ballot. So I actually cast my ballot down at the city county building with the chair of the Wisconsin Democratic Party, was Ben Wickler, and we had some nice media. But yeah, I kicked off early.
Well, now Michael and I are, nothing we can say to that. We didn't, the party chair was there and everything. That's Michael, what's your plan for voting? Can you hear me? He must be muted. Well, Nia and I are going to go to the public library, I think, tomorrow.
Awesome.
Let's see here.
Yeah, we kicked off early voting today.
You know how the lines were? Tomorrow.
There's about 20 people in line when we kicked it off, but the line was growing because they're doing social distancing outdoors.
Right.
So about 20 people when I saw, but people were excited to, and that was at South Madison Public Library today at around about 12 noon.
So any idea how long it's going to take if Nia and I go tomorrow?
No, but it looked like the line was moving pretty quickly.
We voted. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying I never stood there with someone who did it because I had just officially did a kickoff as an elected official, but it appeared that the line was going pretty fast.
So, and whenever Michael comes off mute, he can answer the question too if he wants to. Yeah, the other really good icebreaker question we had is how do you take your coffee? And that was probably the longest discussion that we started with.
Well, I am not a coffee drinker. I actually love tea. I love hot tea. I love my hot tea with cubes of sugar versus packets of sugar. I am learning to appreciate honey with my tea. And I'll take any flavor except green tea. How about that?
Now, explain to me the difference between the cubes and the packets.
The cubes just look more professional, and to me, I can get a better absorbance of it. The packets, it takes me, it's pretty sad, but if you sit with me at a table, I'm using about 10 packets, where I might do like 3 or 4 cubes. So to me, it just feels different, and it looks very different.
I've been drinking tea more since I've been out of the hospital because it helped my throat. I'm going to put sugar cubes on the grocery list because I'm going to try that. I'm doing that right now.
No, you put that on the list. And if it's a failure, you'll have to come back to me and say what happened. But I do that, and I like that better.
Michael, are you back?
Am I?
Yeah, you're back. I think you muted yourself when you did the sharing.
That's because I don't like it when it starts that feedback loop.
Yeah, no, I don't. You want to answer either of the icebreaker questions?
I'm not sure I even heard them.
First one is what's your plan for voting in person, absentee, by mail, and all of that. And then the other one was coffee or tea, and how do you take it?
Kim and I both mailed ours in.
So I'm feeling a little like, what's the word? Not punked out, but like I'm the only one that hasn't voted yet on this on the show today. 14
days left.
I know.
We need you to go do it.
Well, we're planning on going tomorrow. We're only just worried if the lines are so long that I think I have most of tomorrow free, but Nia has meetings until I think 3. So as long as there's enough time to leave the house at 3 and still get there and get before the polls close. We've just been seeing all these. Is she muted? No.
I muted myself.
Oh, I was like, yeah, we're just worried about, like, we've seen all these news stories about how people are waiting for hours and hours to early vote. And, we're trying to fit that in with work schedules and everything like that. And we're, temporarily down to 1 car. And it's just, yeah, but our plan is to go tomorrow.
That's really a great day, with the kickoff today. I think people came and it brought some energy. But, I always say go when it first starts. But the good thing is having those libraries. I've voted at libraries a couple of times, and it was pretty quick. I mean, maybe 1 or 2 people in front of me, but absolutely quick in South Madison.
Okay. That is good to know. So let me just share one more place, and then we can start the official. I think I realized just now in trying to share this and putting your name on it, I think I've been spelling your name wrong for all the years that I've known you.
You have. I'm seeing it now.
Why?
It's a common mistake, and it's okay. Now you know how to correct it.
Yeah, but like if it's the time to correct it would have been like before you're on the show. Nobody's said anything to me either. Like I've known you how long?
Wow, it's been over. I mean, I've been in Madison 25 years, at least 18.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've known you for a very long time, and the fact that I think I'm mildly dyslexic, and so I wouldn't notice that that the 2 letters are switched. But wow, well, let's at least fix it on. I'm done sharing. Let's at least fix it on the ticker. At least, how do I do that? Brand? No, it's under banner. Are you seeing the comments, by the way? If you go on the left side of your screen and click on comments, you can see people have already started asking questions.
Oh, I do.
So just so you can keep an eye on those. And if there's anything, I'll just give you, once I finish fixing this. There we go. Now that's spelled correctly, and I'll have to fix it everywhere else. So, for example, I can throw that comment up there on the screen. Oh, look who's with us tonight, Judge Collins.
Yeah, I know that.
So Judge Collins was the first part in our 3-part series featuring Black women politicians from around the country. She's a criminal court judge in Dallas, and she's just phenomenal. And then the second part of that series is tonight. But before I introduce our guest, I will introduce the best co-host in the world and the best drummer in the world. One of the smartest people I know, and one of my favorite people to talk to my, technically it's my left because the camera is reversed, all the way on the other side of the screen, Mr. Michael Bland.
And to my right?
Who knows?
All the way from Madison, Wisconsin, heart attack of the nation. Holy Ghost, Hammond playing, guitar slinging, ruckus bringing, rebel without a pause, not scared of black folk, Dan Spiffy Neuman, ladies and gentlemen, over there. To my over there.
Right. So, and I think I will introduce the guest. By the way, for the people whose comments are coming up as Facebook user, if you want to have your name on it the way that Audrey does, you go to this link here. I'm going to put it on the screen and I'll put it in the comments too. Go to that link and just give Facebook permission to show your name and face. And then when we put your comment on the screen, then it'll show instead of showing just random Facebook user. Because I'd like to know, there was about 24 at Meadowood Library. That's where I was going to go, was Meadowood Library. So, but let me, before we get ahead of ourselves, let me introduce our guest. Our guest is a pastor. Our guest is as we know, a black woman politician, as fitting the series. She is a state representative here in Wisconsin, representing, what's your district?
District number 77.
And I have known her through church for years and was very pleasantly surprised to find out when she was in politics. And we'll find out a little bit more about that in a little bit. But ladies and gentlemen, also to my that way is in the center of the screen is Representative Sheila Stubbs.
Yay!
So if you're watching, again, comment so we know you're here. Share the video so more people can see it. I want to start off because like I just said, I've known you 3 years through the church community. I've never formally played at your church, but I've helped out at your church a number of times over the years, and I know you and your husband and a number of your church leaders and members very well. And I don't remember how I found out, if it was I saw you on the news or I saw you on the ballot or I saw an ad, but I was like, wait, is that the same Sheila Stubbs that I know that's running for office? How cool is that? And I don't think it was the first time that somebody I knew was running for office, but it was the first time that somebody that I knew that I didn't know anything about them, like having an interest in politics, was running for office. So were you always involved in politics and I just didn't know it when I was, hanging out at your church, or is that kind of a thing that happened?
Well, first and foremost, I really want to thank you, Dan and Michael, for giving me this really honorable opportunity to talk amongst your guests, your friends. So I do not take it lightly. Whenever a platform has been given to me, I am very respectful of that space. But to your question, first and foremost, I give an honor to God, who is the center of my life.
All right, church.
There we go. I would be nothing without him, and I'm not ashamed to spread the goodness of the Lord. I know I would not be elected if it was not for the Lord stepping in the midst of my campaign. You will learn a little later about my campaign and what happened to me, and then you'll see why I give God all the glory, all the honor, and all the praise. Now that's a praise moment right there. I wish you had your keyboard.
You were not kidding about there being an organ, I guess.
I'm telling you, I was trying to tell you. But it's been in my bloodline. My uncle, Walter Knight, who is 84 years old, who lives in Beloit, Wisconsin, was the first African-American alder for the city council in Beloit.
Okay.
I remember growing up about 12 years old, helping him out on his campaign and watching the energy of my family rally around him. It's the first time I heard of a fire police commission. Really didn't understand the importance, but now I get it with what's happening in our community. My uncle also was the president and CEO of OICs of America, so Opportunities Industrialization Centers, which were very common to urban leagues right now, that help people in the tech world. Very well known businessman in the community. In fact, if you get a chance to travel to Beloit, there is a bridge that is named after him, the Walter Knight Bridge. That is such for all that he's done. Everyone in the community loves him. Yeah. I've watched him fight on behalf of the people in the city of Beloit, and it did something for my spirit. I watched my family. He lost one race, and I watched how detrimental it was. And when his opponent won, people didn't realize that they had lost a jewel. but he continued to work along with our pastors in our community in Beloit. Very small community of 30,000 people, but a community that was comprised of teachers. We had many of my friends' parents worked at GM or Chrysler or in the trades. We didn't have the Black lawyers and doctors, but we had plenty educators.
Yes.
And I am so honored to say I was raised by the best and groomed by the best pastors. So I consider myself a blend from Beloit, and I'm honored to be a part of B City.
I didn't know Beloit had a nickname.
Oh yeah, we call it B City. B as in boy.
B City.
So to me, Beloit is the sticks. Is Beloit not the sticks?
No, it was a small community, and you'll learn something about Beloit. Every corner either had a church or a school. So it's small enough that everyone can know each other. But guess what? We were in such a great location. And 2 hours I could be to Chicago, and an hour and a half I could be to Milwaukee, and 6 hours to Minnesota. I mean, think about where we were located. And the cost of living was very low. So, I consider myself growing up on a border of Illinois, Wisconsin, a very unique opportunity to learn jurisdictional policy. So I would watch my friends commit a crime in Illinois, right? And then walk across the street to Wisconsin and say, what you going to do now? You don't have the jurisdiction. So there was things that I saw growing up on the borders that now you have law enforcement learning to have those memorandum of understanding so they can cross into those jurisdictions.
Yes.
Go ahead, Michael.
No, that's all I had to say was yes.
I was going to say, because for those who don't know, Beloit is right on the Illinois-Wisconsin border, and then if you go a little bit north, was Beloit in Paul Ryan's district, or you have to go up to Janesville to be?
Paul Ryan's district.
So that's where Beloit is. And then if you go just a little bit south, you're in Rockford, Illinois, which is where our guest Asia Penix was from and is currently fighting the city government in Rockford, Illinois. I've been sharing her post. If any of our show family has been following what's going on down there, it's been even crazier since her episode. But Beloit is right on the line. And so you grew up in Beloit, but aren't you originally from somewhere down south, or did I make that up in my head?
Yes, I'm originally from Camden, Arkansas, a very small town in Arkansas. In fact, my father still lives there. My father's 81 years old, loves, the South. I consider myself a very humbled young lady, a very Southern young lady. I moved to Beloit at age 5. My mother knew that she wanted us to grow up into a larger city. So coming from Camden, which was like a city of maybe 10,000, to Beloit, a city of 30,000, was a huge city for us. And so from age 5, I grew up in Beloit, and then I graduated from Beloit Memorial High School. But what I could tell you is that city was thriving. It is not the Beloit that you hear about all the crime and all the drugs and no economy and no jobs. That's not the city that I grew up in. But this is what can happen when you have major anchors move out of community, which is like GM. And then other companies begin to leave a community. And then guess what people do? They create their own incomes. And you and I know what that often means is they're doing drugs. They're selling drugs. They're using drugs. It's other activities to make, lives and means happen, which is so unfortunate. So, I love my city. I always do what I can do to give back to my city, but I am proud to say I grew up in Beloit, Wisconsin.
So it's funny because I have a couple of cousins who are public school teachers in Janesville, and I've heard them talk about like the crime and drugs in Janesville since whatever automotive plants left. I can't remember who was there. It was GM, I'm sure.
Motors.
Yeah, and which blew me away because, first of all, Janesville, again, I see it like Beloit. I see it like a small town, and it's very white. And I'm just like, but apparently what happens when all the jobs leave in even these small, predominantly white communities, is a lot of meth is apparently what's taken over. And it's the same thing everywhere, whether you're talking about the inner city and Black people, or you're talking about rural communities with white people. When jobs leave, drugs come.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Judge Collins was talking about that a little bit on her episode too. It's just, you just don't think about it. You think drugs city. You don't, Milwaukee would be the one that you think of in Wisconsin, and then Chicago and wherever else, because that's the kind of the rhetoric that gets pushed. It's been, it's not, doesn't, I don't think it gets talked about as much.
And I can say this about Beloit. When I was growing up, we saw lots of people travel through the community. Beloit was really like a port to Milwaukee, to Minnesota, to Chicago, to Iowa. They would stop there. We saw lots of, expensive cars, and they didn't belong to our neighbors, but it was people passing through, and we know that drug activity was happening. And of course, it was on a border. And remember at the beginning of this conversation, I talked about jurisdictional, multi-jurisdictional, and MOUs and being able to go across the border and arrest. I saw that activity happen right in Beloit for many, many years.
That brings about another story, because there's a gentleman that you might know that used to be a pastor in Madison. I think he's still in Madison, but he's not pastoring anymore. And before that, he used to be a drug dealer in Wisconsin. And he told stories about driving down to Illinois and then riding back with the car so low because they had it crammed so full of products, and they're just praying that they wouldn't get pulled over on their way back to bring the products to Madison. And so is it really just a matter of avoiding being charged? Is it really that simple? Is just you go over the state lines and then, so I don't have to pay my parking tickets in Chicago, is what you're trying to tell me?
Well, now, of course, at the years that we are now, there's the MOUs where they've crafted that. But at first, it wasn't there. Like I said, growing up from age 5 and watching what was happening across the border, now the departments have come together and realized they need some MOUs. So you can't get away with the crime you did 20 years ago now because of the sophistication. And I really think it's the partnerships that have taken place. And let's be honest, people want to live in a safe community, right? They don't want to grow up next door to the drug dealer, but they want to walk out their doors and be safe and have hope and inspiration. And that's the one thing I can say about growing up in Beloit. We were a small community, but the churches really were the dictators of the community. And of course, we had a hidden jewel most people forgot about, which was Beloit College, which was a #1 international small college that offered us activities within our school. So I did a people's program when I was in middle school. They actually gave out all kinds of scholarships. We had the Indian mounds that we would go visit. There's a lot of history, underground railroads. I mean, the history was there. So the African Americans that lived there understood that it was a pleasing place, especially if you wanted to do ministry. And especially if you wanted to go to college, you could survive and raise your family right up in Beloit, where you might not be able to do that in other parts of the state.
So what brought you from growing up in Beloit to being a politician in Madison?
What a great question. So after I graduated from high school in 1989, I am a Beloit Knighter, so I love my Purple Knights. We were very competitive, as you can see, with Janesville schools, Parker and Craig and other rivalry schools. I actually attended at HBCU. It was really important with my mom that I attend a historical Black college and university. Mm-hmm. It was so important for her because I needed to know about myself, where she wasn't allowing the schools to be responsible for educating me. So growing up in Beloit, it was a white community. I had 3 Black teachers, which I was blessed to have, but it was a very white community. My mom said, I need you to have a different experience. So I actually attended Tougaloo College in Tougaloo, Mississippi, which is in Jackson, Mississippi. And when I moved there, I have no family in Mississippi. I knew absolutely no one, but I wanted to be a pediatrician. And this school ranked #1 for doctors. It was a private school. It also had a component for religion, which was important for me. I attended school there, and the very first campaign that I worked on as a college student was Benny Thompson. Benny Thompson is the chairman of the Democratic National Convention, and he's also the first African American U.S. congressional worker from right in Mississippi and Jackson. So when I had this time as a college student, the justice part of me, that drumbeat that's always been in my bloodline from being a part of unions, which my grandparents were, to my mom doing the social justice, it all came to light. Once I attended this Black college, I began to learn who I was and understand my history and my purpose. And it was important that I make sure that I have great representation. So happened Benny Thompson get elected as a congressman, and he's still elected now, was so important for me. And I think because I saw that and I learned more about me, I knew that I needed to be at the table where decisions were being made. I don't need to be invited into your room. I don't need to be invited at your table. I need to be a policy writer. I need to be able to vote. And so that's really where that aspiration kept going. And then while I was there, I was very engaged in our social action committees. I also was Miss NAACP in college, which really was a driver for social justice work. And so once I did that work and coming back to Madison, my mom said, it's time for you to grow. It's time for you to go and make a difference. So that's really where that journey continued, because it started with my uncle, and then it goes to Benny Thompson, and then it goes to Tammy Baldwin.
Michael, you know Tammy Baldwin? Are you familiar with her?
I am not.
She's a Democratic congresswoman from, she's a senator or congresswoman?
She's a senator. She started as a congresswoman,
right?
Actually.
And she's notable to me because I don't know if she was the first, but she was the first that I was aware of that was gay and out. And,
right. I was going to say I've heard the name before, but I wasn't exactly sure who it was.
And yeah, she is from my state of Wisconsin, and when she was a congresswoman, she was from my district or however as well. And so I've voted for her multiple times. She's done wonderful things for the state of Wisconsin.
I see.
Absolutely. So what I did when I moved to Madison, which was in 1993, I actually graduated from college there, and I came to Madison. My mom actually witnessed Simpson Street, which was what the media called Notorious Simpson Street. And I don't know what the two of you think about, but what good comes out of the word notorious? That was the depiction in Madison. And my mom said, are you kidding me? That's Madison, Wisconsin. Why do they have the depiction that it's such a bad place? So my mom challenged me to move into this community and turn this community around. She said, you do not have the right to talk against the place that you're not going to go and be a worker and change those outcomes. And so that was the challenge that my mom gave me, and we end up in Madison. That's basically how I ended up here. My mom's always wanted to live in the city of Madison, but wanted all 5 of her kids to become adults and then be an empty nester and then choose where in the world she wanted to move to. And she wanted to move to Madison.
Wow.
So you're taking us on a real long journey. We haven't even gotten to where you actually decided to run for office yet.
No. And so let me share this really quickly. Tammy Baldwin at the time was my representative, and then she decided to run for Congress. So my mother and I were 2 African Americans that actually introduced her to the community, the African American community. She won as Congresswoman, and then later she ran for senator. In between that time of being a Congresswoman and senator, my husband is a bishop. We got married, and she was one of our guests at my wedding. She flew in from DC to be an attendee at my wedding. So we have a wonderful relationship of 18 years. So I am pro Tammy Baldwin 100%.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know you were that close there. That she was at. You said she was at your wedding.
My wedding, absolutely. We're really good friends.
Yeah, that's. Yeah, I'm certainly not that close to her, but I love Tammy Baldwin. The closest thing I can say is I think I've played for some fundraisers for her, and I've definitely voted for her.
Wow.
And she's an asset to the state of Wisconsin and to the U.S. government.
Yeah, so she and I actually did a kickoff for absentee ballots on Friday. She had an 18-year-old it was her first time voting. Actually was with Senator Baldwin and signed her absentee ballot, and I was a part of her press conference. It's just the three of us downtown. So whenever Senator Baldwin gets an opportunity, she doesn't forget about me. She does give me a platform to share about my perspective and why it's important that we get out and vote right now.
That's really cool that like she still, you know, she's like people as they succeed, whether it be government or, you know, music or business or whatever else. It seems like in most cases when people succeed, they kind of leave behind the people that they were working with in their like before. And it's cool to know about her that she still looks back. Actually, on that note, you still hear from I can't think of his name, the gentleman that you helped elect in Mississippi. You still have any connection to him?
No, I don't, because I have not been back to Mississippi since around 1999. But yes, whenever I see him, I will say things, lots of memories, but I know if I walked up to him and started my conversation, he would remember me. I'm a memorable person, must I say. But let me get to the point that you're asking me. Why did Sheila Stubbs run for office? The real story is living.
Michael and I don't even need to be here.
Go ahead.
I'm just going to navigate, okay? I'm a politician. You know, we navigate into the next sitcom. So what I did is living on Lake Point, and like I said, notorious. It was called Simpson Street at the time. People were really running out of the neighborhood, and yet my mother had me running into the neighborhood. At the time, I was a senior probation parole agent, working in the same community that there was an office. Talking about perplexity, talking about how I was sometimes not wanted. I was looked at differently in the daytime.
Okay, can I interrupt you real quick? Because this is the first time that you're mentioning that you were a parole agent as well. So you just kind of slipped that one in. So
yeah, 8 years.
I knew that about you, but I don't think anybody else knows that about you. So you want to take that little detour as well?
Yeah, so I was a probation parole agent for 8 years. I was hired in this enhanced supervision project known as ESP, where I supervised the highest risk at the time, the terminology that correction used, offenders from any of our Department of Corrections facilities. And at the time, we were overpopulated. And you probably remember we had our state offenders actually living in other states at federal prisons. So I was one of those agents who supervised the highest risk people. People have been incarcerated 25 years, 18 years, from sex offenders to drug dealers. I specialize in mental health and domestic violence cases. I actually got that job thinking I can go in and change the world. Honestly, I'm this young 20-some-year-old. Okay, I'm going to be an agent. I'm going to help change the outcomes. I'm going to make sure I get people out of prison. And I walked in thinking I had access to the door. But what I really had as an agent was a window. That's all I could do was look out the window. I really can change the policies and practices. It was a job that I appreciate I had an opportunity to deal with, but it was a really difficult job, sometimes very thankless. Many times I was ostracized by my own community because they saw me as the system and being a part of the system instead of being a part of being a problem solver. And I would say, take me out of this office being the only African-American agent, and let's see how you're going to be treated. So sometimes I was treated harder by people that looked like me because they have been treated so bad for so many years through such a very difficult system. And so when I decided to run for office, many times doors would not open because they saw me. They never saw me as a pastor. They saw me always as an agent. And the way people start opening their doors is because of my husband. When my husband would go out campaigning and they said, "That's your wife?" I mean, that's your wife. She was an agent. And my husband say, "Don't judge her by the job that she has. Judge her by her ethics and who she is." And so it was a hard task. For 8 years, I was an agent. I spent 2 years I'm just really trying to get back connected with the community because I was not appreciated.
That's crazy to me that you, just by having that job, which I understand, and we've had a lot of people on the show that are, kind of very vocally critical of the police and the justice system and everything like that. But and again, my experiences with the justice system have been mild compared to a lot of people's. But I would think that the one person you would hope and expect that would have compassion and actually be somebody that that can actually help the community would be the parole and probation agents, because that's kind of the only person that you can expect to have mercy on someone once they're out and trying to turn their life around.
Absolutely. You would not believe how many times I was disrespected by criminal justice partners. I would go to court and the judge would think that I was the mother, the sister, the auntie, the girlfriend. I was everything except the professional agent, because I was African American and that particular parolee was African American. They didn't care who I was. They just automatically assumed. How many times I went to our jails and actually end up getting an NCIC or CIB check, standing there and they're telling me every address I've lived at. And I said, really? How do you know I've lived there? They're doing these checks to see if there's a warrant for me. And I'm there on a professional visit. I've gone to prisons and had to remove personal garments in order to get through the detectors as a professional visitor. And so it was just very overwhelming. It was a hard system. And I had a difficult time from both ends of the system, from parolees and from the system itself. And so it really did a lot of wear and tear on me. It was a lot of soul searching. I did as much as I can with the 8 years that I could to help people. I will say now, there are some of the parolees that I see that say, thank you, Ms. Stubbs, you saved my life. There are other people who will never give me another chance. But here I was as an agent, someone who had the most power over their lives, where I'm responsible for helping them gain residence, employment, support, treatment, and transportation. I'm the one who is deciding if they're going to be in the community or out of the community. I'm the one deciding if they're going to be revoked. I'm the one deciding who can be their friends, where they can go, where they can't go. And yet, I was the person that they treated the harshest. And so it made me think about, why do people feel the way they do about a system? So that is one of the reasons that I got myself into the point of running for office. I need to be able to address these broken systems, because systems are made to be broken and they're made to be recreated.
Okay.
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah, I guess that's a mic drop moment, because okay, well that was me taking you on a tangent from you actually telling the story from the question I asked you 40 minutes ago. So let's go ahead and
that question. So actually I ran for office because my neighbors encouraged me. They saw that I was someone who was able to get bills passed. They saw me as someone who can navigate these really difficult circles. I was meeting with mayors, county executives, elected officials. I'm going to be very honest with you. If you're my elected official, I have your contact information. When I walk in a room, you will know my name and I will know your name. And so they knew that I worked this strategy, because you should not be representing me and I don't know you. I only know you from TV. I only know you for policy. Are you truly voting my belief systems and my values? And what happened is the county board supervisor who was in my district was not voting my beliefs. So instead of just complaining about it, I decided to get up and do something. So when this particular elected official came to my home, and I'm going to say this very clear, they come around every 2 years when it's election time to sign the nomination papers. I made it very clear that I was going to run against him. And he said, what? And I said, I'm going to run against you. Like, you don't work and do the things you want to do. You've disrespected us when you come downtown. You don't talk to us. You don't return our phone calls. He was a white male who was very connected with the Dane Dems. He was a good old boy and part of the good old boys club. and I ran against him. He was a 2-term incumbent, which means he had been in office 4 years. It's harder to beat someone who's in office for a longer time. So hint, if you want to run for office, it's better to go and run against that person their first term. Each term that they stay there, it's harder because they build that much more constituency. And so one of the things I did was run against him. I had the hottest race in Madison in 2016, and I beat him. I beat him severely. And I beat him at Mount Zion Church. That was the area in which he put his mouth on my church and started telling people negative things about my church. And I said, my church had nothing to do with this. Let's just deal with the merits. And I beat him, and it cost my race about $17,000. That's a lot of money for a smaller race. But again, I beat him, and I had a lot of great support. And I've been on county board for 15 years and never have had an opponent. See how good God is?
Well,
that's a praise break. I wish you had an instrument.
Next time we'll have an instrument. I have the organ downstairs. It's just not set up, but we'll make it happen. But what was I going to ask you? So what would be some examples, and this is just me asking out of pure curiosity, what would be some examples where your policies have been different than the policies of the person that you beat?
Oh, absolutely. Investing in my community. One of the things that I did right away is I got to know my neighbors. You know, how many times have elected officials actually knocked on your door besides the time that they want their nomination papers signed? So one of the things I did was I actually started having community meetings and gatherings. I did newsletters. Actually, I ran my campaign like the Reverend Jesse Jackson. The night of my campaign night, I had over 100-some people in Richard Brown's building, which he donated the space to me because I really wanted to represent the voices of the community. I promised to represent the voiceless, the homeless, the persons whose voice was the silent. One of the things I did right away was do some with human services. You probably have heard about joining forces for families. It's a national model, making sure that I support social workers in the community. I am a big component of bringing people out of their comfortable spaces, their offices, and bringing them into community. And when you come in community, you begin to understand what families are struggling with. What are some of the things that family need? You cannot judge a family by sitting in your comfortable office and not coming to see what's happening. So funding joining forces for family was critical for me. Stormwater management. Our environment is critical. I live right on the lake. And so the constituents that I heard from right away were constituents who lived on the lake when it was flooding. So making sure that I can get sandbags to them, making sure I took care of the wake zones that they needed, being relevant, being accessible, listening to people. One of the hardest problems for elected officials to do is listen. But the one thing I've always promised to do is have less talk when I'm at a podium and more action. I move from an actionary perspective, and that's something I've done very well in 15 years. So I've done policy for children, child protective services, joining forces for families. One of the real big jewels is creating a community restorative court, which is about 5 years old, that focuses on 17 to 25-year-olds who commit a crime in Dane County. But I created a court minus a judge. Who does that? And guess what? This community restorative court is in South Madison. The partner that plays the role of the judge is our district attorney. How many people do you know go to court, and when they look at the jurors, they don't look like that person? They're not even their age group. That's what happens with this restorative court. We have people that look like them to help them make better decisions. We give them the services that they need. And you know what the beauty of this is? They don't get a criminal charge on their record. If they complete this restorative justice agreement and the victim agrees to it, they don't get another charge. That is life-changing. So that is the kind of work that I do that's very upfront and reform-driven that I know will make a difference in the outcomes of people of color in Dane County.
Yes.
You got anything besides an amen, Michael?
Not really. I'm just
There's not much else. We're just here.
The representative has a lot on her mind. I'm just listening.
Yeah. So one thing I did want to touch on, because we've had another politician on the show that's also just incredible, City Councilman Christopher Alway from East Orange, New Jersey. He said something that really stuck with me. And I've been using this argument on Facebook with all the, voting doesn't matter. Oh, neither the Democrats or the Republicans serve our needs. All the people that want to argue that things don't matter. He said that as a citizen and as a voter, your job starts with voting, but it doesn't end there. You're supposed to call your representative. You're supposed to email your representative. You're supposed to write letters, because how can you expect them to govern according to the way that you want and your needs if you're not letting them know what your needs are? And so he said that we're supposed to do more than just vote. We're supposed to vote and then follow up our vote.
Absolutely. I mean, that is critical. Like, for me, there were so many of my ancestors that died, and others died so that I have a right to vote. It is critical that we make sure that we hold on to voting. Voting is the lifeblood of our democracy, and the integrity and the progress of our nation relies on American people to do their duty and voice their opinion at the ballot box. If you don't voice your opinion, you don't have a chance to say anything. And right now, we cannot afford to be silent. We cannot afford to let another unarmed Black man, Black woman, Black child be killed. We cannot allow another innocent, peaceful protester to be killed. We cannot allow COVID-19 to not be addressed under this administration. We cannot allow for our economy to be in the state that is in. It is our life. This particular election is the most critical election of our life. I voted since I've been 18 years old. I am honored and proud to go to pull that lever every time. And I tell you this, I spend the time on election day going around the community and picking people up and taking them to the voting poll. In fact, I babysat just to make sure that mother or that son or that child, that person can go and vote. And that's what we have to get back to, the premises of why voting is critical. Why do we need to do this? We have to do it. If you don't do it, then you don't have a say. And for far too long, other people have been speaking for me. But guess what? I am Wisconsin State Representative Sheila Stubbs. Put some respect on that.
Okay. I'll just look at Michael again, because there's nothing much we can say. I guess we should have prepared that you were going to be preaching the whole time. When you talk about respect, though, that might be a good segue, if you feel like talking about it, to what happened that resulted in you being on The Daily Show.
Yes. So on August 7th, 2018, I was out knocking on doors with my family, my mother, who was 71 at the time, and my 8-year-old daughter. I'll be very honest with you. I did not know where I was going on the west side of Madison. I actually GPS to that neighborhood. It's not a neighborhood that I go into. I'm not familiar with. So I GPS to this particular neighborhood. It was a Saturday at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I had been on that street about 20 minutes, knocked on about 8 doors, met some future constituents at some doors. Some people were not there. When I noticed that the police had pulled up behind my car, I was probably at house number 8 talking to this future constituent, and I said, I'm sorry, but I noticed the police is behind my car. I need to go figure out what's happening, but I will come back and talk to you. And they said, oh, that's fine. You've gained our support. Go right ahead. So I walked over to my car, and I spoke to the officer, and I asked him, what can I help her with? And I said, what's happening? She said, oh, someone called the police on you. And I said, what? She said, they think you're a drug dealer. I said, a drug dealer? What does a drug dealer look like? I'm not a drug dealer. I've been called things, but I've never been called a drug dealer. And she said, what are you doing here? This is 2018 in liberal, let me say that again, Madison, Wisconsin. And I'm being asked, why was I in a particular neighborhood? Well, I had my name tag on that said Sheila Stubbs for State Assembly. I thought that was enough. Nope, not with her. She then goes on to say, well, you're knocking on doors. How do you know what doors to knock on? And I said, I have a walk list. She said, well, can I see it? So let me just pause there. What if I didn't have a walk list? People are out canvassing all the time, but I just so happened to have a walk list, so I showed it to her. She said, oh, I'm sorry. Then she said, I said to her, here's my campaign list, and I'm trying to convince her that that was me on the campaign list with the county executive, the former county executive. That wasn't enough. I had to show her my driver's license in 2018 and explain why I was on a particular side of town. Let me be clear, the neighborhood was an all-white neighborhood. That was the problem. My race was out of place, and it's called profiling by proxy. That's the terminology. So if someone had a problem with my bias, the way I looked, I committed no crime, but it was the coding words that this anonymous caller said to the dispatcher. Car full of people, drug dealer. And when she approached me, that was the demeanor in which she approached me. But must I say, she had already approached my mother. My mother is a former president of an NAACP from right here in Madison over 12 years. And my mother said to her that she was driving me in the neighborhood as a candidate, but that wasn't enough. Coming from a 71-year-old mother, for this officer to believe who I was. Here's the part that hurt me the most, is my 8-year-old. In the eyes of an 8-year-old, my 8-year-old watching her grandmother and her mother be disrespected by this police officer. In all my life, I've taught my daughter to go to law enforcement. It's a safe place to go. But I'm looking in the eyes of my 8-year-old, and my 8-year-old said, Mom, why don't we belong here? And I told my daughter, we belong wherever I take you. That's where we belong. But I watched so many blinds get pulled up. I watched so many dog walkers. I watched so many people come out of their house and shame my family and I in the middle of the street. The outcomes could have been differently. All I could think about is getting off that street. I was so humiliated and degraded. I remember calling my husband and telling my husband what had just happened and my campaign manager. And I literally got home, and God being my witness, I fell on my floor and I could not even get off my floor. I cried that bad because I had never been treated and humiliated. Now, let me be clear. I am already a community leader, been on county board 15 years, a pastor, a neighborhood association member, a member of the NAACP, a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority. I'm a well-connected African American in this community. But yet, I still had to be disrespected. So I fell on my floor and just cried. I was within 7 days of my election. Now, let me be clear. My election, again, was a profile election. I had 3 other people running against me, and they were millionaires. I didn't have the kind of money, but I knew God told me this was my race. I knew I could outwork them, which is what I did. I did a lot of footwork. So people that saw me on TV, I had to suspend my campaign for 24 hours because I literally could not get off my floor. And that was how close my race was. And here's what I did. I didn't tell anybody. I even went over to SS Morris, Dan, and I preached. Even after that happened to me, on that Sunday, I did their Women's Day celebration and I preached. And my husband said to me, you have to heal yourself from inside out. When I preached, the women thought, oh my God, she's preaching to me. I was preaching to myself. After that was over, I won my race. That's why I say you're going to put some respect on my name. I won my name. I won my race by nearly 50%. That's how much those neighbors cared about me. And I am, present history, I'm the first African American to ever be elected to the state legislature from Dane County. I broke 170 years of history. How about that? And now I'm your state representative.
You are. I really should have had the organ. I'm sorry. I apologize. Michael's been trying to get me to switch my filming to where I have the organ for weeks now.
That's
and,
all right.
I really should have done it this week. I apologize. So Just to be clear, so you now represent the person that called the police on you.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I forgot to say that is really important is I asked that officer if I could speak to that caller to assure them that I was only in the neighborhood knocking on doors as a candidate. The officer had the discretion to let me speak with that caller or not. What do you think the officer decided to do? She did not let me speak to that caller. So as of today, at 7:57 p.m., I don't know who called the police on me. It's an anonymous caller. What I can say is I've received hate mail at my house because of the incident. This particular anonymous caller had sent mail to all of the media outlets saying that I caused them to have to move out of the neighborhood because of what I did, and I did nothing wrong. But the local media covered it, but it was the national media who heard my story, and I was able to do my first national interview on CBS Evening News with Jerika Duncan. They sent a team from Chicago to my house. CNN News with Chris Cuomo, The Daily Show. Trevor Noah did his skit. RH America, you name it. New York Times, CNN Online, Washington Post, you name it, national outlets, they've all covered my story. But one of the things I can say, and I have not done a second interview with CNN News, but they just showed me a clip after, unfortunately, George Floyd was killed. They put my story, George Floyd's story, Arbery's story together, Breonna Taylor, and they came up with 2 words, unconscious bias. So that's how relevant my story is, that profiling exists, whether people believe it or not. Racism does exist, and racism is a public health crisis.
Unless Michael has something else, I'm gonna throw Todd's question up there because that's a pretty solid question. Can you see the question, Representative?
I can see the question. Do you want me to go ahead and address it?
Of course.
So what we're doing at the state level, there are 9 common sense bills that was introduced on August 31st with Governor Evers and Lieutenant Governor Barnes, along with members of the Wisconsin Legislative Black Caucus. There are 7 Black elected officials at the state level that is fighting across the state to really address the issues of inequities for African American. One of the bills that I introduced is a bill that's called unnecessary summoning a police officer. If you call the police on me because of my race, then you will pay a fee. That fee is $250. It's a civil suit, but that's one of the bills that was introduced. We also introduced a bill, no knock warrant, which is the bill in which it talks about the Breonna Taylor case, that in Wisconsin, we need to ban that warrant. We also introduced a bill, no chokeholds, which is what happened with George Floyd. They're common sense bills, use of force bills. We really need to define use of force. And why are we allowing it to happen? We need to spend more money on de-escalation tactics. We need to make sure that when these law enforcement officers are involved with the shootings, that there is a history, that people can go online and find out about this officer. Every time they move from department to department, they should have an ongoing employment file so we can learn about them. There's also a bill that we introduced for $1 million to be granted in communities to address the violence that happened. I'm sure each of you know every time there is a shooting and there's unrest, our communities suffer greater. And it should not be every time there's an incident, now we're talking about it. We have got to learn in government to be proactive instead of reactive. And so these 9 common sense bills, unfortunately, did not go to session like we requested. I am in the minority as a Democrat. Both houses are controlled by the Republican. Governor Evers, a lot of his duties have been restricted in authority. So what happened because of that, they were able to create a task force meeting. Speaker Boss on the Republican side created a task force, a speaker's task force addressing racial disparities. And I am one of the co-chairs as a Democrat. and Representative Steineke, who is the majority leader, is a Republican, and we will have these 9 common sense bills before this task force. Our first meeting is going to be next week. We're going to name task force members this week from across the state. Law enforcement is going to be a part of that task force. Public health, which I've said racism as a public health crisis. Faith-based leaders. I was excited to get faith-based leaders, not-for-profits, activists are part of this conversation. Law enforcement, myself, will only have 4 elected officials, which is wonderful. Because if we're going to check our politics at the door, we need community to help us drive this conversation. So those are bills that I'm working on for law enforcement that we have to pass. We don't need another Breonna Taylor. We don't need another Aubrey. We don't need another Tony Robinson. We don't need another Dontre Hamilton. We don't need another Savelle Smith. How many more cases? How many more lives? We don't need another Jacob Blake. How many more lives must be lost or wounded before we as policymakers begin to address the inequities? Do you know Wisconsin is the absolute worst state to raise a Black family? That should be shameful and unacceptable. That's why we've got to go to work and change the outcomes, because Wisconsin should be a state where all can work, play, and thrive.
You mentioned Tony Robinson. Am I wrong, or is the officer that killed him still on the force in Madison?
He is still employed as Officer Matthew Kennedy. Yeah.
That's crazy to me. Michael, do you know about this story? That was one of the examples from here in Wisconsin where an unarmed Black teenager was shot by the police. Have you heard about that particular example, Michael?
Not that particular example. There's so much going on. I mean, you know how it is. It's
absolutely. There's so many.
You want to read about an unarmed Black man getting killed by the cops.
Yeah.
Wait your turn, man.
So what happened on March 6th of 2015, Tony Robinson was killed in Madison, Wisconsin. He was 19 years old. And at the time, he was fatally shot by Matt Kinney, a Madison police officer. Matt Kinney was involved in one other fatal shooting before he shot Tony Robinson. And in May of 2015, the Dane County District Attorney, who was Ishmael Ozane, determined that the shooting to be self-defense, and no charges were brought against Mr. Kinney. He is still currently working for Madison Police Office, and the Robinson family. So Tony's mom, his family received $3.35 million in settlement from the city of Madison.
Okay,
it's never enough to bring back his life.
Right.
That's just so hard for me to wrap my head around, is that you can kill somebody and still be on the force to kill more people, essentially. I don't mean to make it sound flippant, but I mean, that's kind of what you talked about earlier with being able to track the histories of ththese police officers, because it seems like everybody that's been involved in these shootings has had a history of violence. It's not like, am I wrong?
Absolutely. There's another case, if you give me permission to talk about, which is Alvin Cole.
You can talk about whatever you want to talk about. Again, Michael and I are just here, you know?
Oh, you're just here. Okay. So Tony Robinson was African-American. Matt Kennedy was a white police officer. Alvin Cole's case happened on February 2nd of 2020 in Wauwatosa, Wisconsin. That's the unrest that you're hearing right now. It was a Black police officer, Joseph Minish, shot 17-year-old Alvin Cole right in Milwaukee at the mall, Mayfair Mall. And it was deadly force that was used against 2 other individuals in the past. So he's had a past history of these shootings, have never been charged. And I don't know how much you saw these last couple of weeks, but Alvin's mom and sister were out protesting and was arrested by law enforcement. And his mother was injured brutally by law enforcement. They had arrested her, but they did not charge any of them. That's the unrest that's happening right now and Wauwatosa. The police chief did not believe that the officer should be fired, so he thought Officer Mensa should not have been charged, and he says there is no reason up to this point for none of us to see that he should be removed from the force. So that's something families are struggling with. Not only are they employed, they don't get removed from the force, and they're having multiple fatal shootings. And what we're trying to draft for policy at the state level is we need to keep account. The community should know who's working in their law enforcement departments. And that's what's happened. I truly believe, and this is my belief, my opinion, because I want people to know what's written versus my opinion. I think because it was more like black on black crime, I don't think many people heard about Alvin's case because he was shot by a black police officer. But nevertheless, it has led to a lot of unrest in Wauwatosa. That's just another case in Madison, in Wisconsin that we've seen within the last month that have brought out a lot of protesters and the National Guards. We've seen it in Kenosha. We've seen it in Madison. We've seen it in Milwaukee. How many more do we have to lose before we at the state level begin to address these issues?
And I just want to I know you've said it, but I want to kind of clarify that you're somebody that's worked in the justice system on multiple levels, so, you're somebody that could theoretically at least be painted as pro law enforcement just simply based on your career history. Mm-hmm. But you are, advocating for these systemic changes at a state level, which I think are a lot of people scared to take that kind of stance because of backlash from their constituents or because it seems like it's not you don't hear about it as much from our elected officials beyond the talking points. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, from the beginning of this conversation, I said, let's talk more action. The people elected me to go into that state house and fight. I've been fighting systems all of my life, and this is about saving a life. We got to stop talking about scenarios. We have to be active. We have to be proactive. And all my life, I've been proactive. I've made stands where sometimes I turned around and I was standing there by myself. But you know what kept me? Knowing that God was right there with me. At the end of the day, I made the right choice. As long as I can go to sleep at night and live with that decision, I'm all right. And what I can say about my district is they've been extremely supportive. I am up for re-election right now. In 14 more days, I'll be re-elected. I am one of few Democrats across this whole state that don't have an opponent. I don't have a Republican running against me. I don't have a Democrat running against me because I went to work on behalf of the people. And as long as my district feels that I am doing my job, they will make sure that I keep my job. And remember, I've always said it's important for the elected officials not to choose their constituents, but it's more important for the constituents to choose their elected official.
When you say the elected officials to choose their constituents, do you mean like carpetbaggers, I guess is the term, where you move to a certain area in order to represent that area? Or do you mean like...
I'm referring to gerrymandering, how the maps are drawn, fair maps. We know it's not fair. I mean, if you look at my district, I start on the border of Monona and I end on the border of Middleton. There's parts of South Madison that belong to me, and there's a part of South Madison that belong to Representative Jimmy Anderson. Our lines being drawn are so bad that gerrymandering is really bad. And that's been one of the problems that the Democrats have encountered around the state. There are just some areas that are just very red drawn districts that it's hard to have someone have a different ideology and represent that part of the state. And so we've got to get to fair maps. We've got to make sure that the people's voices and the people's maps are there, which takes me to a place that we have to talk about, the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is a Republican Supreme Court. And, you've got to get objectiveness in there. And we will not see these maps turn around until we can get leadership back in our Supreme Courts.
So before you go into more detail about that, wanted to ask you to backtrack a little bit, because most of our viewers are not from Wisconsin. So I know about the gerrymandering in Wisconsin because I live here and I pay attention to that kind of thing. But I think probably the majority of people might not be aware. Isn't Wisconsin the most gerrymandered state in the country?
Yes, sir. And we have the worst disparities in the country and the most segregated. Milwaukee is the most segregated city in the country. We have problems.
So can you explain just what gerrymandering is and how that came to happen in Wisconsin?
Yeah, so it's looking at a certain area and knowing if I can draw out this district, automatically a person who would be elected in that district would represent a certain view. So when you get down to urban communities, the lines are drawn different. So my district that I'm in, the 77th district, which is comprised of the south and west parts of Madison, the village of Shorewood Hills, and the University of Wisconsin-Madison, you will see my district is jigsaw. I have the poorest people in my district. I live in the poor part of my district, the most at-risk part of my district, and then I have the most affluent part of my district. When you look at the maps, you're like, how did you get a district drawn out like this? That's because as they drew the map, they got to a certain area, and it's like, okay, let's just draw them here. What's important is the census. I need to just say that for a moment. That's why we need you to do your census, because you get your elected officials, your local, your federal elected officials, you get your congressional district, you get funding to take care of the roads and health care and child care. That's why we've got to do our census. That's why that was so important, because it helps us when we're drawing the maps. It helps us to gain another seat at the congressional level. And so up north, you have the majority of the seats by Republicans. And when you get to the southern part and certain parts of Wisconsin, when you get to Eau Claire and you get to Oshkosh, a little bit more urban, that's when you pick up your diversity around the state of Wisconsin.
I was looking for a map of Wisconsin districts so I could just show how gerrymandering it is. I can't find. I don't suppose you have one off top, do you?
No.
Okay, I'm gonna look in Google a little bit more in case I can find one.
We can send you something, but I don't have anything in front of me.
I was trying to put it on the screen right now. This one kind of shows. Let me see if I can. The bottom line. Go ahead, Representative.
I just wanted to say that Governor Evers has named his particular commission right now called the People's Maps. They're working on the mapping right now. The good thing is there's no elected officials, which, let me be really clear, we should not be on independent groups drawing lines to decide our district, because most people know it would not be fair. It would be biased. And so they're at their second meeting with drawing the maps. And it's an independent group, and that's who should be drawing these maps, is independent groups. It should not be elected officials.
That doesn't really show everything I was hoping it would show, but at least it gets us somewhere. But yeah, anybody who wants to find out more about that, you can Google, because literally the Republicans have drawn the state so that they're, despite the fact that Democrats outnumber Republicans, they'll draw the district so that in each district Republicans outnumber Democrats, and then it becomes a Republican district.
Mm-hmm.
And it's well, I should let you talk about this and not me. Is that part of why we're having such a hard time? Because Wisconsin is also, not only are we the number one in racial disparity and segregation, but we're the number one in coronavirus right now.
It's so sad. We as Democrats, along with Governor Evers, certainly tried to do mandatory masking. Governor Evers tried so much an earlier state when we didn't know much about the coronavirus, right? But most people were watching what was happening in New York, and every initiative Governor Evers tried to put forth was nearly blocked. The Supreme Court blocked some of his restrictions and executive orders, and thank God for Dane County, because we have our own separate health department. We can have our own executive order. That was blocked at different times. But at the end of the day, Dr. Fauci said it better. He said, you're going to get another wave, and it's going to be worse than the first time. And what I can say is Democrats believe in scientists. I ran on that platform. We believe in scientists. I want to hear from that scientist before I hear from that elected official.
Yes.
Do you find yourself actually like, so how often are you in like a, I don't know, what do you call it when you and the other representatives meet?
Session?
Okay, but so either, I think session is what I'm thinking of. I mean, do you find yourself in arguments with other representatives that may be from a different political party that don't believe in science or racism or things of that nature?
Oh my God, often. It's a reality. I'll give you an example. Let's take my scenario. I'm one of them. I'm one of their colleagues and experience racial profiling. I introduced this amazing bill, wanted to across the entire state, across the United States of America, right? And I'm telling them I was profiled. They would not support this bill, but instead they supported a swatting bill and brought a victim to a hearing. And I listened to this victim talk about if her husband would have moved one more inch, the SWAT team would have killed him because someone did a prank and a joke. Both of our scenarios were the same. It was a waste of resources. It was a waste of taxpayer resources. But for some reason, my Republican colleagues felt compelled to support the swatting bill, but they wouldn't even give me a chance with my profile bill. Something's wrong with that story. And so what has to happen is apparently my voice wasn't loud enough, or I didn't articulate it enough, that I have to have other voices come into that space that oftentimes don't look like me, that has to be a part of some other systems to say, I believe her. We should do that. And that's what this task force is going to do. But to me, that's sad. That's hurtful. Because remember, I am a victim of racial profiling, and I am fighting for victims all across the state of Wisconsin. And how many more victims do we have to have before we get something done? When I go out and I protest peacefully with these marches, they are demanding action. They're not asking us. They are demanding that we, defund police, for example. They're demanding other things from us. They're demanding immediate reactions right away. They're demanding funding, and what's happening is we're not in session right now. We technically don't go back to session until January. So all the work being done right now is really being done at a local level. That's your county boards and that's your city councils.
Mm.
What you got, Michael? Okay. See, Michael's not normally quiet, but sometimes when we get a really, wise guest, yeah. So, what was I going to say? Go ahead, Michael.
Representative Sheila is, she's giving a lecture.
I know.
That's all right.
We're not neat. But before I get to the next thing I was going to mention, I mean, it seems like you've got a lot of points that you want to make sure you hit. Are there any other points on your list? I don't want to take you away from the things you want to make sure,
Right, we're here every week.
Right.
Well, just a couple of quick comments, if I may. I like to talk about this task force that is being created right now. That's going to name members from this community and throughout the state of Wisconsin within this week, and start our meeting next week. And the reason that this task force needs to happen, it is the only viable step we have to moving forward those 9 common sense bills. And, when people saw me as a Democrat, now remember, I've been in the Capitol 2 years. I am a freshman legislator, and I am working with the Republican leadership. At the end of the day, it's about saving lives. So I can put my politics to the side to go to work on behalf of the people. And if I can do it, so can my other colleagues. There are 99 state representatives, and there are 33 senators. The people elect us to go to work. And during a pandemic, if we expect our constituents to go to work, and let's not talk about unemployment being held up for weeks at a time, then why can't we as the elected officials get up and go to work and answer the phones and get the things done? Our membership is going to be about 30 people. I'm really impressed with some of the names that are going to be coming forth because I'm embargo. I can't share that with you, but please invite me back at some point to talk about this task force. But what really made a difference with us, and I want to really give credit where credit is due, is our 3 professional teams got involved with what was happening with this special session. Our Brewers, our Bucks, and our Packers said to Republicans, go to work with the Democrats and pass these bills. Now, the reason that's important is because as a Democrat, I'm in the minority. I don't set calendars. I don't decide what bills go to a committee. Governor Evers tried. We got gavelled in and gavelled out. So the only person that can really move us forward is the Republicans themselves. So me given this really honorable opportunity to sit at the table and not just be there, but remember, I believe in decision making. To be a leader on this task force is going to make all the difference. We have a very aggressive timeline. We want to make sure these bills are before us in session in January and February. We want a package of criminal justice reform bills that there's 9 bills. Wisconsin Professional Police Association has bills, other bills by senators or state reps that's in the Capitol, other bills across the country. We want experts to come in and talk to us. We have to pass these bills. That's just what has happened. And failure is not an option for me. So we're going to be meeting bi-monthly. Our first meeting is probably going to be a hybrid model because unfortunately our COVID numbers, went in the wrong direction. They increased. And so we believe in keeping people safe. So it's going to be a hybrid model. But the reason I wanted to say that is because we're going to have an aggressive schedule where people are going to have to do some work outside of the building. But I'm looking at every task force member to do their part and lift as much as they can so that we can have these meaningful bills passed across the state of Wisconsin. And the nation's watching us.
Let me ask you a question. So just kind of tying everything together, if we want to help you get these bills passed, what we need to do is we need to call and email our representatives, including the Republican representatives, right?
Absolutely.
Can people from outside of Wisconsin call and email as well?
Absolutely. We need all the help we can get.
So can you, and if you don't have it now, you can give it to me at a later date and I'll post it on the show's page, the list of people that we can contact. Because that again, just sort of tying everything together and what Councilman Awe said and what you said, it sounds like the thing that's holding this up is the Republicans, and the only thing that might get Republicans to move on it is if they get enough calls and emails from people where they feel like they have to do something.
Absolutely. And it's, at the end of the day, it's about saving lives. That's what it's about. And we know an injustice is happening to a sector of people. It can't just be a Black problem. It has to be a state of Wisconsin problem. It has to be a priority. This is a crisis. This is an urgency. This is unacceptable. If it was any people of color, I would feel the same way. So tell me where your priority is. It has to be to save more lives. And so that's why I am fighting. And you best believe me, when I'm in that room, I am fighting to make sure my values are heard and to fight on behalf of every family across the state who have lost a family member. This is this one opportunity that we get to get it right in the state of Wisconsin. And the reason I said the nation is watching us because of Jacob Blake's case. Where right now we're watching an unarmed Black man be shot 7 times in his back, and where it's under investigation right now, and we don't have a verdict back. But I best believe you, when that verdict happens, there will be unrest if it doesn't come favorable. People are protesting because they're frustrated. They're angry. They keep watching more and more people never get convicted. And so we've got to bring back some normalcy into the state of Wisconsin, and we've got to hear people. And as, a member and a co-chair of this task force, my voice will be heard loud and clear.
I'm just gonna go off on a tangent real quick. Earlier today, and it had nothing to do with any of the guests of the show or anything like that. I made a status where I said black women are superheroes, and I was talking about something completely unrelated. But I was just kind of struck by the fact that if you go into any facet of definitely in America, and you look for the people who are fighting the strongest for the things that are right, it's almost always black women and black women in there. And it's just one of the things that we have had the privilege of seeing on this show is how that just like, I mean, some of these white male Republicans in the state assembly have to hate you. Like how does Speaker Vos, how does he feel about you?
He likes me. You know what it is? My family has always said it doesn't cost you anything to be kind and to be nice. I'm a kind, loving woman of God, but I express myself. I articulate where I stand. We have different viewpoints, but I still can be nice. But what they understand, they know the direction in which I'm coming from, and I'm coming because I want it to be right. That's why I chose to accept this position, because first and foremost, when it was offered to me, the first thing I said is, let me pray about it. I do no decisions without going to God first. I don't want any trickery of the devil. I don't know what I'm getting myself in. Remember, I'm a freshman legislator. I'm up for re-election, and I'm making a really critical decision to come out among all the Democrats, and he's coming from the Republican, to come together and move forward in a bipartisan way. That is what this is about for me. So I get along very well with Representative Steineke. I think that's one of the reasons they selected me. I'm not an extremist. I'm a realist. I'm practical, but I am someone who is demanding outcomes. And I'm not going to wait much longer. It has to happen. It has to happen now.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a thing and then I lost it. Come back to me. I had a specific follow-up question, but it disappeared that quickly. It'll come back. It's just, again, this has mostly been a sermon / lecture, and Michael and I are just the amens. So,
yes.
What was I gonna say? It was good too. It was a really good follow-up question. I remember what it was. So, and I know I'm not bringing it up for this reason. I know you're not officially allowed to endorse any particular candidates and anything like that. That's fine. But somebody was arguing with me about, who to support in the presidential election. And their argument against Joe Biden is that he's done so much bipartisan stuff over the course of his career. And they were arguing that that's a negative thing. That, that if he was truly for the people, he would not have found a way to work with the Republicans. He would have, because, from being from Wisconsin, we had Russ Feingold for so many years, who was, a wonderful elected official. And then the famous McCain-Feingold Act, which, is an example of bipartisan cooperation. And I get why nobody would want to work with today's Republicans, because they certainly aren't reasonable. But at the same time, I hate this thing of that bipartisanship or cooperation has become a dirty word or a negative thing.
Well, I can say firsthand and in a perspective that the people of the 77th Assembly District expect me to go to work and pass bills. I'm just going to be a realist with you. Being in the minority, you don't get anything. You don't get a chance to decide what bills go on a calendar. You don't get a chance to decide what bills are going to be placed in a particular committee. You are trying to get someone on the other side of the aisle to work with you. We are honored to have Governor Evers. We have enough votes to block a veto, thank God. But you need to get to work with your colleagues. And so, a couple of my bills are bipartisan bills. For example, deregulating hair braiding bill that I introduced that said, most hair braiders are African American. It's an art. Why are you requiring me to go to hair braiding school, which they don't even offer the hair braiding? and demanding that I do these hours because of what? And so you don't even have the instructors to do it. So I know for sure, because it is an art, why should I be criticized? Why would I have to go through another set of standards because that's what you want? So I introduced a bill that talked about deregulation of these bills. And we know firsthand, this is one way that women are becoming entrepreneurs. Braiding hair. They make money. They can do it from home. And so that was my first bill that became bipartisan. Actually, a representative with no hair, a bald white guy, actually came to me and said, let's do this hair braiding bill. And I was like, what? But we did. It's one of my bills that actually made it to committee, but did not make it out of exec to make it to a calendar. So that's an example that when you go to work on behalf of the people, you work with who you have. I have another bill that's a community restorative court bill that is bipartisan. That's what you want to do. If that's what it takes, that's what I'm going to do.
So why? So I'm guessing that the case for regulating hair braiding is just in terms of like making sure that it's safe and sanitary and stuff like that. Is that? I mean, what's the case for regulating the braid? I mean, because I grew up around Black women, so I grew up around people that everybody braided hair in their kitchen.
Absolutely. So the bill that I introduced was AB 899. I introduced it on February 11. It was referred to the regulatory and licensing reform. There was a public hearing that was held, but we didn't have voting. There was no voting. But under this legislation, people are no longer burdened by strict licensing requirement. They can spend more time honing their craft instead of attending programs that have little to do with braiding. Businesses can grow in the African American community as a result of this bill, and that's why you see a lot of hair braiding shops in our community. Where hair braiding is an ancient and it's a popular art. Why would you use that against me? A craft. This particular legislation would allow more people to take part in their tradition. Other states have analyzed this situation and come to the proper conclusion that cosmetology and barbering license are unnecessary. And I truly believe that if I'm given an opportunity for equity, Wisconsin should follow suit as well. I know that this hair braiding bill, is going to create more jobs and less people will be doing hair braiding from their home, and the state will generate more revenue because if you don't have people where you know where they are and have a system, then you'll never know who's doing what kind of work. Wisconsin's not alone in eliminating these regulatory licensing requirement. And 2015, 12 other states have scrapped these rules, like Minnesota. The most recent state, I want to say, was Virginia, and Pennsylvania, I think, was the other one. But I was contacted by someone from the Institute of Justice, who talked about how these licensing programs had nothing to do with public health and safety. Because most people think about, public health and safety, that's why braiders should be in the South. When this Justice Institute did research, it had nothing to do with that. But it was just restricting entrepreneurship and restricting individual expression. So that's one of the bills when we go back into session that I'm going to try and get exec, is deregulating hair braiding.
I mean, I've heard here and there about that. That's like, I think just because, and you remember, I used to be a member of a church for many years that had a barbershop and a salon and whatnot, all affiliated with the church. And so I kind of was a fly on the wall for some conversations about the hoops you had to jump through in that industry. But other than that, I hadn't heard anything about this bill, and I live in your district, I believe. So, I mean, it's amazing the stuff that's going on that that doesn't even make the press.
No, and it was really disappointing. Hair Love actually got an Oscar. So here we are, the Legislative Black Caucus members. We introduced a Crown Act bill. We introduced the deregulation of hair braiding, and we could not even get any bills on Black hair past this legislation. However, Hollywood actually gave out an Oscar. So it was just dumbfounded that there's such a disconnect, that I was struggling with that. So that is one of the strategies that the Wisconsin Legislative Black Caucus members are going to do. Our bills that actually made a public hearing, we're going to go back and have those bills exec, and then hopefully have those become law. So that is one of my to-dos for the next session in 2021.
So I know, I know that you have, you're already, you know, basically, I know you have to end on time, and I want to make sure we cover all the stuff that you want to talk about, because you've been very, you know, vocal about the things. So please, if there's anything else in your list that you want to hit, make sure we hit it. What else can we do, you know, in terms of coming up on the election that's coming up, and then after the election, besides just make sure we vote. And then, I mean, depending on how this election goes, how is that going to affect our district?
Right. Well, I can share right now that this is a very critical election. Every state senator and state rep is up on, it's up for an election. Senators are even odd years. So I don't know if all of them are up, but the majority of them are up. And our constitutional officers at the local level, so it'd be, you know, your treasurer, your register of deeds, your clerk, your district attorney, would be the constitutional officers that are up for election. And our president decides to tell people to vote up and down the ticket. Make sure that you look and say, because I'm a Democrat, I vote for Democrats up and down the ticket, because local elections are just as important as state and federal elections. I can say firsthand that your future is what's at risk. Your health care is what's at risk. Our climate change is what's at risk. You know, your economy, your freedoms are really at risk. And so we cannot afford not to vote. And I tell people to text or tweet or call someone, but, you know, don't stop the conversation of voting. When you have a casual conversation, you can say to that person, have you voted? Because some people, what I'm hoping they don't do is try to make history and get in lines on the date of election and get discouraged. So my rule of thumb is early vote. Wisconsin, we just kicked it off. We're one of the states that we can early vote. Others then do absentee. It's like I do absentee or early vote. I have gone to the polls, but when we've gotten other options, I try and utilize those other options.
What was I going to ask you? I have a thing in my head, and then I keep listening, and then I get distracted. So what would you say to somebody? Because I get in these discussions all the time, especially on Facebook. People on Facebook are the worst. That, you know, my vote doesn't matter. My vote doesn't count because of the Electoral College. You know, there's no difference in the parties. Neither Republicans nor Democrats help me. I mean, you've probably seen more arguments than I have about people that have their justifications for not voting. What do you say to people when they tell you that they don't think their vote matters?
Well, first and foremost, with one vote, you know, we've known through history that we've had presidential elections won by one vote. One vote will make a difference in a recall. One vote makes a difference if a person decides to concede. I mean, there is so much that can happen with one vote. And I tell people, your democracy is all that you have. And if you don't vote, you lose that. And then you can't complain about who is in office. I will share with you, as an elected official, I go door to door, and I come to reality. There are some people who just will not vote, no matter how much I try and connect them, how much I stand there at the doors and communicate. There are some people who just will not vote. But what I tell other people is, think about your future. Think about your children's future. Think about, you know, taxes. You know, what is it that you don't want to lose? Then that has to be the reason that you go to vote. What is it that you're afraid that if someone get in office, they're going to take away from you first? Is it your home you're going to lose? Is it your car? Is it your job? Is it your health care? One of the most critical pieces of legislation that's at risk with this particular election is health care, the Affordable Health Care Act. And people with pre-existing conditions must be concerned. So I tell people, when you talk about health care, you have a reason to be concerned because you might lose that. Is that enough to get you to the poll? And I would say it has to be felt within the spirit. It has to be felt within their heart that it has to be a priority for them, or else people just don't do it.
You got anything to add to that, Michael?
I don't. I think that she's spot on with it. It's something you got to really decide for yourself, and it's I mean, you know how I feel about the process. It's the only reason we know that voting is still really a valuable thing to do is because there are so many people trying to put up stopgaps and trying to trick people out of voting and or getting the opportunity to vote, fake ballot boxes and whatnot, and just changing locations and moving the goalpost. I mean, it must matter. Otherwise, they wouldn't try so hard to take your choice away from you.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
I actually had someone who called me last night and they said, "Oh, I think I want to show up on election day." And then they were concerned about COVID. And I said, "Why would you show up on election day when you can early vote?" To me, that makes sense. And I'll be very honest with the both of you. People that I've had conversation with that have been African American, if someone gets it, that's a family member. Voting isn't a priority anymore. It is taking care of that family member. If death happens, they're up and gone. Like, everything changes within a moment of an eye. Our seniors, our precious jewels, as I call them, if it rains, that climate prevents some of them from coming out and voting. So what I say is, while you have a chance, do it. Don't wait till the last day. What if you lose your license? What if something happens as an emergency? You don't feel good, or something happened to a family member. Your vote will make a difference. And so that's why I tell them that don't wait to the end. Leave that for somebody else who intentionally want to do that. Voter suppression is real. We got to educate people. There will be long lines. We saw that in Milwaukee in April. There were long lines, voting poll sites changing. Then people get frustrated. Why put yourself in that position right now when you could early vote?
I got a question, and I kind of contemplated it for a minute. I wasn't sure I was going to go there, but I'm curious to know what Representative Sheila has to say about it. I keep seeing people saying things about, like, adult black males who secretly support Trump, who are voting for Trump now. Have you heard anything?
No, I have not.
Okay,
I was just listening to the article with Ice Cube and Kanye, but that's about it. That's probably not what you're talking about. But
people are just saying, like, that. Okay, well, maybe it's not a real thing. Maybe it's just maybe it's just, what do they call it? Just a sinkhole in the internet somewhere where this sort of rhetoric has started about how they're black men are voting for Trump, but they're not talking about it.
Wow. Well, I have received inquiries from different media services and sources asking, how's the black community voting? Are people energized for the Biden ticket? Have they decided to go with Trump? What is happening on the ground level? It's kind of quiet. And I'll just be honest. People, when you're a candidate, you got to work hard to get a vote. You can't automatically, because you're a Democrat, believe you're going to get the Democratic vote. You still have to work hard. My mom always told me, if something is given to you, you don't appreciate it the same way as you work hard for it. I don't take my constituents for granted. I do my best to outreach to them. I go do legislative doors in the summertime. I do newsletters. I do legislative surveys. I try to make myself available as often as I can, as many activities as they engage with me. You want to be visible and you want to be active. But what I can say is, for far too long in America, too many elected officials have taken the black vote for granted.
Absolutely.
And now you have to work for it.
Yeah. And I guess that's the the thing that I guess it's the reason why it didn't really necessarily upset me to hear that. I mean, the reality is that Black people are not a monolith. We don't all think the same. We don't all feel the same about all of these issues. And I mean, if the only the only Black Republican I might have voted for was Alan Keyes back in the day, because I felt like he was really a Republican by a truer definition somehow. Like there were certain principles that he was speaking about that resonated with me. But I mean, I knew he wasn't going to get. I wasn't going to waste my vote on Alan Keyes because I knew it wasn't going to happen. Yeah, I mean, I guess if for no other reason, hopefully it'll make Democratic candidates work harder for the vote if they feel like Black people are not just going to automatically roll over. I mean, if I was going to say the truth, my truth about Biden, it's like, okay, he just kind of, after he pulled all the women and diversity out of the running, it's kind of like we were handed this dude, because there's still the stigma in this country that if you're not a white guy, you can't win, and so it's I mean, I don't have any specific beef with Joe, but he wouldn't have been the one that I would have chosen, and I feel like everybody's got a checkered past, but if you got a history of not collaborating with, and I'm not even saying that the Republicans are the other side. I also think that being bipartisan, I think, is a great thing in theory, but I also think that Barack Obama, made a real attempt at being a bipartisan president, and you can't legislate hate. You can't get past a bunch of white dudes with their arms folded saying, no matter what he brings to us, we're not going with it. So
I mean, that's a real conversation I can share firsthand with one of my bills, the Office of Equity and Inclusion, which is one of my pride and joy bills I introduced in November of last year. Governor Evers actually signed an executive order. It's creating an Office of Equity and Inclusion and making appropriation and creating a council. So we would have an equity specialist at every state agency across the state of Wisconsin. We would have a council that's operated by Lieutenant Governor Barnes, that's appointed from the governor. They would have 5 employees. And the reason that's important, you have to choose framework. How are we going to address inequities if we don't have a place to store the information? We don't have people whose jobs is to be intentional and to be relevant, to do the work and find the disparate, to acknowledge that you have retention problems, to acknowledge you're dealing with racism, to acknowledge you're dealing with bias, to acknowledge you need training. We need people whose jobs is intentional to deal with race. Once we create these jobs, we also need to have funding to create this council, to create the office. So $3 million is what I asked for. I got every Democrat in the Senate and on the Assembly side to sign on to the bill. I am unable to get one Republican. That's all I need is one to make this into law. But yet we've heard how bad it is in the state of Wisconsin. But the one thing Governor Evers did is he signed an executive order because he saw that my bill could not get passed. So he was able to start requiring the departments to do equity plans, requiring the departments to start having the trainees to make sure they're compliant with affirmative action. This is how difficult it has been, that you have to strategize another way. So you try bipartisan, and you're right, you can't get stuck right there. I recall going to one of my colleagues and asking her to sign on to this bill. And she said this to me: are you serious? Are you talking about advancing Black people over white people? I don't believe your data. You can get your data to say whatever you want it to say. You can trick it. I realized I could not continue conversating with her. No matter what I said, she was going to be defensive. So I realized, let me leave her door, and I just kept going down the list. Couldn't get anyone. I went and knocked on doors because let me tell you, I'm in the state capitol and I don't have a problem knocking on your door. I will come to your door. I will ask you to join me in this effort. I still can get anyone to sign on. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to stop what I'm doing because they don't support me. I just got to find another strategy to get the work done. Maybe it's this task force. Maybe the task force is a way to get your viewers, other viewers, to join me and say, this is good policy that we need to pass. So that's the kind of help that I need. I also need help with people going out and liking my page. Representative Sheila Stubbs, I always like people to like my page, keep up with what's happening across the state of Wisconsin. Be intentional. Contact me. There might be something going on I don't know about. Maybe I can draft some policy. But I just want to make sure that I'm relevant with my constituents.
That's all right. We're running out of time, but I gotta get you to put your reverend robe on for just a hot minute. And you can take this question seriously or not seriously. But I wanted to turn this corner before we let you go. Reverend, are we living in our last days?
Oh my Lord, I believe it's the end times.
Well,
hold on a second though. Tell them the name of your church.
End Time Ministries International.
That's y'all's main slogan. That's marketing for y'all. The end time. Armageddon is marketing for the end time church.
That's it. That's the truth.
So you're saying you believe we're at the precipice?
I believe it.
Is there a particular reason?
I think the Bible is beginning to fulfill itself. Send a pestilence upon your people. If my people who are called by my name shall humble themselves and pray, seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then and only then will I heal the land. And that's what needs to happen. Our land is in need of healing. We are in need of healing. 2 Chronicles 7:11 is coming to fruition. And we got COVID-19. Our land can only be healed by God. He created the scientists and they're going to do that part. But he is the only healer. And you know what? We serve that same God from 2,000 years ago. I trust him. I believe him. And I know he's my all in all. He is my Alpha and my Omega, my beginning and my end, the bright and the morning star. He is my Yahweh. Hallelujah. He's my Rapha. Hallelujah.
Amen. Praise God. What are you, Dan? You mad you didn't go down to the organ?
I would have to do some rearranging down there to be able to film down there, but
we could have had deliverance right here.
Man, we would have gone into warfare music or something.
That's it. I do a wonderful conference for women, and I thank Dan for praying. He played for one of my women's conference, and it's called Brokenness Brings Breakthrough. We're all broken people, but until we get through our brokenness, we cannot have that breakthrough. And right now, I'm a broken vessel. God has me broken up, but y'all watch out when he put me together again. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. That's right.
So before we're out of time, did you have any questions for Michael or myself?
No, I really want to thank you both for giving me this honorable opportunity. I hope your viewers appreciate it, my conversation. I hope they continue to join you. I hope they began to follow Sheila Stubbs, hear my story, but most importantly, realize that I am the people's representative. And remember, my name is State Representative Sheila Stubbs, and put some respect on that.
State Representative Sheila Stubbs is the real one.
Hey, so
won't she do it?
Yes,
did we hit all the things on your list?
Absolutely. I felt it was a great list. Absolutely.
So
fantastic. You want to tell them what's coming up next week, Dan?
Absolutely. So I could not be more excited for next week because the first two installments in our 3-part series featuring Black women politicians have been pretty jaw-dropping. Judge Dominique Collins, and if you missed her episode, go back and see it. She's doing amazing things in Texas, and she was commenting on the broadcast earlier. Let me see if I can find her comment and throw it up there. But that was the first. No, her comment's gone. But that was the first part of the series. Then the second part was tonight, and Representative Sheila Stubbs just blew us out of the water with her preaching and teaching. And then next week we have Representative Jasmine Crockett from Texas. I can't recall if she's from Dallas as well or if she's from a different area of Texas. But that's the 3-part series. And so the end of the series will be next week. Hey, Arnie. I hear Arnie.
Yeah, she just walked out of the room again. Came in here to meow.
Yeah.
For 2 minutes straight and then walked out.
She wants to be on camera.
I don't know what she wants.
Do you have any pets, Representative Stubbs?
Huh?
I do not. I do not have any pets. I grew up around them. No, thank you. I have a child. I have a husband. That's a
right.
lot of work already.
Yeah, you have humans who need love first.
Yeah.
Humans working 2 jobs. That's the American dream.
Mm.
Somebody else have to take care of the pets.
Go ahead, Representative Sheila. Tell them.
So
you don't need no hobbies. You got work to do.
I got work to do at 2 levels of government.
Oh, so you're still holding both positions now?
Absolutely.
I completely missed that the whole conversation. I thought you left one position when you okay. So you
15
are
years on county board, currently still there, and 2 years at the state level.
I thought that you left the county board to be the state. So okay, well that went completely over my head for the entire
That's all right.
So okay,
she knows who she is. She knows what she does.
Hey, that's amazing. Michael, you want to remind everybody what we got coming up election night?
Well, you got a raggedy group of ne'er-do-wells and storytellers and rebel-rousers. Soul Asylum on election night. All 4 of us will be on the show. And we may or may not talk about the election. There was a little controversy over our live streaming program when Dave Perner said, "Don't just vote for Biden." And some people wanted to get upset. But this is a man who has always worn his heart on his sleeve as far as social issues and not so much politics, but right and wrong. Dave Perner has very clear lines, and they're lines drawn about those things, and his feelings are all over his song. So anybody who tuned in to see Soul Asylum and thought that he might be thinking about voting for Trump, I have no idea where they would get that idea. Dave Perner is a gentleman and a scholar and a man of the people, and the man who shall remain nameless is not.
I'm super excited for election night because with Soul Asylum here, if it looks like the election's going well, we can talk about that and we have a great time. And if it looks like it's not going well, we can talk about completely different things and it'll still be a great time.
Sure, but Jerry already told us there's going to be days.
Yeah. Do you agree with that, Representative Stubbs? That we're not going to know on the night of?
I do. I mean, the post office has all these ballots to get through, the absentee. Look at 28 million people have already voted, record numbers. We want it to be accurate, right? We want every vote to count, and I don't have a problem waiting. I just want to make sure every vote is counted.
Yes.
Tell them. Okay. Well, that'll be our election night. Thank you so much, Representative Sheila Stubbs. I'm so glad that you got to hang out with us, and I really hope we get to talk to you again. Anything else anybody want to have before we actually end on time for a change, Michael?
It's May the Lord watch time.
You want to give the benediction, Pastor Sheila?
Oh my God! Oh, I want to say something very quickly. I have endorsed the Biden-Harris campaign, and very quickly I met Kamala when she came to Madison, and I was running for my seat. And when she met me, she said, "Something is unique about you," and she said, "You're going to win." And she immediately said, "How can I help you?" So I saw her very personable. And when someone takes the time to look after little old me, to say that they want to help me, I will do what it takes to help. And so I am now being in a position to help her. So I was honored to be across the state of Wisconsin, lifting up the Biden-Harris team. I want to thank you all for giving me this wonderful opportunity. I want to bless your program. I know your viewers are just going to continue to grow. You have me as a captured audience to do my piece, to join again. But this has been an amazing program. My only suggestion is, Dan, bring that organ.
So hold on a second though, because are you going to get me in trouble? Because your staff told me you weren't allowed to endorse anybody.
Well, we're gonna have to go on we can't go on my official page. We'll go on my campaign side.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. I don't want them to yell at me. So
she got in the spirit and she let her true colors out.
Hey, well, if the Lord led you to preach that word, then who are we to stop you?
Hey,
so, well,
that's what it is.
Go ahead and give the benediction then.
Are you serious? You want me to pray us out?
Why not?
Yes. I'm honored to pray. Oh, gracious and everlasting Father, oh God, we come beseeching you this night, oh God. We come thanking you for your blessings, your glory, and your honor, oh God. On tonight, oh God, you put grace before me, oh God, and you put your mercy behind me, oh God. So I'm in the middle, oh God. Grace and mercy, oh God. I lift up Brother Dan, oh God. I lift up Brother Michael, oh God. Continue to touch them, oh God. Hover all over them, oh God. We call for healing in the name of Jesus. Heal their bodies, oh God. Heal their minds, oh God. Heal their hearts, oh God. We call for healing for all of those that are viewers on tonight, oh God. We lift up every patient of coronavirus right now, oh God. Go into the hospitals, oh God. Go into the mirrors. Go into their lungs, oh God. We send back our angels, oh God. We plead the blood on every hospital door right now, oh God. Every physician, oh God. Every nurse, oh God. Every piece of equipment. We plead the blood of Jesus in the name of Jesus, oh God. Oh God, come right now, oh God. Show your glory high and mighty, oh God. And let your train fill this temple, oh God. In the name of Jesus, oh God. And so I lift you up. I give you all the honor, oh God. I give you all the glory, oh God. And I give you all the praise. I worship you. And I give this to you in the matchless name of our Lord and our Savior, Jesus the Christ. And every heart can say amen.
Amen. All right.
We should have you pray out every episode. Well, thank you so much, everyone. We will see you next week. Thanks for watching.
Amen. Bye-bye.
Amen.